there's a place you can get to in prayer if you persist in prayer. If you stay long enough in prayer. Bishop Waleke told me something. There was something I was going to. He said, listen, if we stay in that prayer and push it in prayer, he said, we will get the answer. If you stay there and persist in prayer and stay there, and the patriarchs used to pray, they prayed on an issue until they got the answer. The answer doesn't mean the circumstance changed, but they had God on that issue, which means God spoke to them and it became clear what was going to be the outcome. And you can pray to the point where you break through in the cloud and you hear God clearly on the issue. Which means when Daniel was praying and said, I was there for 21 days. He said, from the first day you offered prayer, God heard and answered. He said, but the prince of Persia withstood me. In other words, you are pressing in prayer because you're overcoming the dark clouds that are hindering you from hearing what God is saying in that situation. But last week I was praying about something and I will confess, but there was anguish. I was preparing for Ebenezer night and God told me, he said, this feeling you are having is the feeling I want you to know how people feel. He said, a lot of Christians feel like this. This is what you should relieve people of. This anguish, that the way you are feeling is how people feel about their lives. Many people are going through things that they are in anguish. He said, can you imagine continue living like this with anguish on the inside? All right, this kind of thing within you. And so I was praying until I hit the light. If you are dealing with something and this is a major thing, because this kind of things are the major attacks, go on a fast. When we say a fast, it's not your suffering that God rewards. So you don't have to suffer and say, God, you see I suffered. Okay? The purpose of the fast is to receive what God has given you. And so what you want to do is that you increase your sensitivity to God when you decrease, all right, the amount of food and all of that within your system. Elijah prayed until he heard from God. All right, Hannah prayed until she heard from God. That you stay there in prayer. Daniel stayed there until he heard from God. You stay there and say, God, this thing until I hear. Not that it changes, but I know exactly what you are going to do about this particular situation there. And you stay there in prayer and push, all right, into a certain level in prayer there when you have time for you to be able to hear what heaven has to say.